Hello, hello, hello. Last week's episode of our, Almighty Answers was about promiscuity in the Torah, in the biblical sense. This week, we'll tackle what a man may do with his own tackle in medieval times. This is Speaker's Corner. Hello, 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 ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another episode of Speaker's Corner. I am your host, Tim Byron, and today we'll be doing a list covering 6 of the most bizarre factoids regarding sex in medieval times. Dusty sex, yes. My, what a bizarre topic, though. Although a fun one, yes, wouldn't you say? Perhaps it could be fun. Who doesn't like a little rumpy-pumpy? Right. Well, why medieval times? Well, why not? Yes, antique sex never fails to get one off. Who doesn't enjoy a good romp in the past, especially when it comes to fornication? Oh, I can't guarantee that won't be the last double entendre today. On with it, shall we? The first fact of medieval times regarding sex involves, well, no sex at all. That's peculiar, is it not? That is because there was a sect of Christianity called Catharism, which technically wasn't a sect because the Catholic Church never really acknowledged them. It's a long, sordid mess of a history and potentially an episode for another day. But Catharism taught that celibacy was the epitome of purity, much like many other cultures. However, Cathars took it to the extreme by even forbidding it in marriage. I mean, what's the point? They were quite progressive in treating both sexes as equals, being vegetarians and not treating manual labour as some sort of thing beneath them. Still, though, that bit about discouraging marriage, let alone carnal relations in marriage. I mean, yeah, it's true. The next fact pertaining to medieval times and sex has to do with the antithesis of the prior fact. And, let's call it an encouraging characteristic that we should all encourage in our leaders. Pope Innocent VIII was leader of the Catholic Church from 1484 until his death in 1492 at the age of 62. That's obviously not the interesting factoid because people called him Innocent VIII the Honest for admitting to having illegitimate children. Shock horror. His reign over the church even has a deliciously appropriate moniker. The Golden Age of Bastards! That was due to his siring at least 8 illegitimate sons. And it was common knowledge that he had many more. I mean, how many? Yes, no TV in those days, of course. He was a proper bastard in his own right. Colloquially speaking, anyway, because he was the Pope that started the Inquisition. If that weren't bad enough, as he's also requested breast milk from a wet nurse on his deathbed. Sounds like something Weinstein would do. Yes, didn't do well, did it? Let's move on. Right. The next interesting fact has to do with another leader of a church and arguably one of England's most famous kings, Henry VIII. Big one, lots of marriages. It's been a common topic when speaking of his lordly portliness that he had syphilis, although there is no evidence that can corroborate this fact. Many point to his wives' miscarriages and his perceived promiscuity, and that wasn't necessarily true, relative to the time in which he lived, of course. Either way, the fact in question is that there is an accusation regarding Henry's unsyphilis that Cardinal Wolsey, who was effectively the head of state in many regards, gave it to him by whispering it into his ear. Blimey, looks like the technology for ear condoms wasn't exactly available at the time. Oh, obviously this is not true, even if the king had the STI, but it's especially unique, given that he very likely did not have the disease at all. We stick around in jolly old England, in old Blighty, for the next fact. Brothels in 14th century England weren't exactly the most, let's say, discreet. They didn't exactly have Google Maps or Waze to guide them to the nearest maison derrière, so directions were ostensibly simpler back then. One could find brothels on such aptly named streets, and do excuse me for this, but this is a factual statement. Here we go. Whore's Nest, Slut's Hole, and even Grope Cunt Lane. Well, no one can accuse them of beating around the bush. Oh, blimey. Yes, lot of bush back in those days. Good thing my mum isn't watching this episode. Or is she? Mum? Mum? Oh, Mummy, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, yes, I know. Bad words. Naughty. Naughty boy. This sort of street naming wasn't exclusive just to the Brits, as 15th century Parisian streets had similarly, descriptive names, such as Rue Puy de Mort and Rue Poilecon, which translates to... I won't look it up for you. Do it for yourself. But mon Dieu! Sacre bleu! Yes, I'll poke you in the ear with a dripping baguette. We might never air this episode if we keep talking about these chaste medieval times. We continue with the theme of prostitution for this next fact, as it involves social responsibility, in a sense. Brothels were commonplace throughout Europe, as I mentioned earlier, but one has to wonder, what happens to all the money? Now, clearly, some goes to the establishment and the employee, but what about fees, taxes, and the like? Well, in 1400s Nuremberg, it was customary for visiting prostitutes to be tax-deductible. That's right. Go get your rocks off and then do some proper accounting and save yourself some money. Maybe impregnating the prostitute and then declaring that child as a dependent would double the savings? But then children are expensive. So, yeah, guess not. From sex that some would have wanted to be taboo to an act that should always be taboo, we switch to the subject of bestiality. Down, Fido, down. This is a rather bizarre fact, but did you know there were animal trials in the Middle Ages? Yes. Courts held trials for animals accused of committing crimes. The first recording of such a trial is from France in 1266. A pig faced accusations that it had devoured a child. Well, the court found it guilty and executed it. Seems like an excuse to have a cookout or a barbecue or a hog roast rather than jurisprudence, really. Judges would pay attention to any difference in the animal's behaviour to determine its innocence or not. If it were unruly, for example, then the judge would use that against the defendant. These trials would only apply to domesticated animals because, well, how silly would it be to put a wolf on trial? Honestly. Then again, they did do that at some point in another context. Right, back to sex with animals. Ew. Anyway, if a human had committed bestiality and a court found them guilty of it, then they would burn at the stake, which also applied to the animal in question. If they were guilty too. Once more, seems like an excuse for a roast. But not all the animals were guilty in these trials. No. In some cases, the court absolved the animal of the crime because it was unwilling to partake in the act and therefore innocent. A rape victim, which, well, obviously, consent, no matter what the species. Consent is the important thing here. Well, that's our episode for today regarding the 6 sex facts. Try saying that 6 times fast. I hope it was both enlightening and entertaining, despite how naughty the subject matter may be. As always, I am grateful to you for watching and appreciate when you share, subscribe, like and comment on these videos, so please continue doing so. I would also suggest watching videos from that interesting Almighty character over at Almighty Answers, because although he may be unconventional, he does provide some solid and fascinating knowledge with a dash of entertainment, if you can excuse the fact that he's from Yorkshire. Ish. You might even notice a similarity in our voices, and then again you might not. That's all for now. Thank you again, as always. Pip pip cheerio, and here's looking at you, kid. Ooh, need a sip of cold water, and oh, is this thing on? Didn't mean to whisper that. Someone was actually accused of giving Henry VIII syphilis by whispering in his ear. Cardinal, no less. Actually, I didn't mean for you to hear. Well, stop talking, Tim. Right, cheers, ladies and gents. Cheers! Hello again, my lovelies. Thank you so much for watching that video. It really means a lot. Well, what can I say? Keep the smile going. Do remember to subscribe and ring that bell. It helps out like you wouldn't believe. It just makes me so happy. Can you see this big smile of mine? Keep calm, carry on, keep a stiff upper lip, and if you like, there's another channel in the description. Almighty Answers. Definitely worth a watch. Best of British to you. Pip pip cheerio, and until next time, here's looking at you, kid.